Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Rualbrecht and I am one of the developers of the IC Bioconductor package. Today I'd like to try something new when investigating issues reporting on the repository, as it's quite difficult to discuss an interactive application, describe the bug in text format or multiple screenshots and so on. So I thought I'd try the video format to just walk through the bug myself and investigate and discuss what the origin of the bug, if any, and the desired behavior, and what may or may not need to be done to address the issue and ultimately close the issue and make everyone happy from user to developer. So without further ado, I'm gonna start describing the bug. This format may change in the future. It's just an experiment today, and if it works well, hopefully we'll make more videos and facilitate the communication between us and users. So we're talking about issue 580, which, if I jump straight to the core part of the issue, is about the complex heat map, which is a panel defined in the IC package itself, so one of the core panels, but it's a bit of an unusual one, as it's the only core panel that's not ggplot based. It's based on the complex heat map package. So the complex heat map is being rendered every time I make a search on the raw data table, and the heat map is receiving raw selection from the table. So here we're talking about a scenario where there's two panels. There's a heat map on one side, and the heat map is listening to another panel, a table panel, where you can change the selection. So, and when you change the selection in the panel, so you would expect the heat map, because the heat map is listening to the raw data table, you would expect the heat map to react to changes in the upstream panel. However, not all of them, as we'll see. So the complex heat map being re-rendered is okay if the option use custom rows in the data parameter box of the heat map was not selected. Of course, if you're using custom rows, it means that you are manually typing the rows that you want to see in the heat map. So even if the heat map is listening to another panel, it should not react to a change in selection, since it's using custom rows anyway. If the option of using custom row is selected, then the heat map should not be re-rendered until I import the selection and apply the change. So again, if you're not using custom rows, then it means that you are using whatever selection is coming in, and it makes sense the heat map if the option is selected, the heat map should not be re-rendered until you import the selection. So if you're using custom rows, it means that even if something changes in the upstream panel, the heat map should not react to it because it's using custom rows. So basically we have that's another reason why the heat map panel is a little bit complex, is that there's so many ways of providing input to the heat map that we had to be a bit careful at how we do things. So if you're using custom rows, changing the list of features in the table should not affect the heat map, since it's using custom rows. If you're not using custom rows, then typing in the search bar and restricting the list of features in the table should affect the heat map, since it's not using the custom rows, so you would be using the rows in the table. Anyway, I can repeat that multiple times, but everything works better with an example. So what I've done, just today I've started a repository called ICDebug, where I intend to put scripts, reproducible script that describe application that help me investigate the bug. So I will link that in the description of the video, which I will upload on YouTube, so that people can watch it and experiment and try to replicate the bug or demonstrate whether it works in their scenario or not. So now, using that script and going over to RStudio, so this is the same script. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a mock single-site experiment, and I am designing an initial state for the application to save myself some time clicking around. And then I've also used the tour feature of IC to walk us through the process of the issue. Okay, so all you have to do when you get that script, there's no data needed because it's simulating data. So all you have to do is take that script, execute it, and it will open a Shiny app in your web browser. So this is the tour feature. So we're exploring issue 580. The heat map, so initial state of the app is already telling the complex heat map to listen to the raw data table, which is the first panel on the left. And so updates to the selection made in the raw data table may trigger re-rendering of the heat map, right? So that's the intention. And the little message at the bottom also confirms that the receiving selection link is properly detected by the heat map. You can also see it on the left side that the transmitting panel is aware of sending information. Now, in this initial state, we are ticking the box. So the heat map is using custom rows. That means that the heat map should only refresh when the custom list of rows defined in the panel itself is edited and applied. The panel should not refresh when the selection in the upstream raw data table is changed. So let's try that. So currently we have gene 1 selected, which is the first gene in the heat map anyway. But if I click around, you can see on the right side, the heat map is not updating, right? So we change the selection in the table on the left, and the heat map on the right still only shows gene 0001. So indeed, we expected that as we're using custom features at the moment. Instead, the way you would be using that selection would be by clicking on the edit feature name, which is contains the custom list, and in that modal window, which I'm not going to open here because it breaks the tour, you could import gene 0007 into the heat map. We'll do that after I've done the description of the bug itself, of the issue itself. So now, going back to custom rows and telling the heat map that we don't want to use the custom rows. So initially, nothing's happening. We can discuss whether that's what do we want to happen at this point, but I think it's safer to just do nothing. But remember now that the custom rows are not being used. However, the heat map is still listening to the raw data table panel as confirmed by the message down here. So the heat map listens to the table, but if I click around the table, the heat map is still not updating, right? And that is because the list of genes in the table is still the same one, no matter what. So the way that works, typing in the search bar, in fact, will restrict the list of genes present in the table. So all the genes start with are called gene something. So if I search for A, I'm not going to hit anything. And because the heat map is listening to the raw data table, the heat map is now empty or completely disappears because there's no gene in the table. So if I delete that, we go back to the initial state, fine. But if I look for genes that start with G, I'm going to find 2000 genes. And the heat map now is taking its time to redraw a heat map of 2000 genes. So if I say, for example, I want the genes that are gene 001, so that's going to be genes 10 to 19, so that's 10 genes, and the heat map is now showing genes 10 to 19. So I think that works as expected, because if we go back to the bug, the issue being described was that the complex heat map being re-rendered should be okay if the parameter, the custom rows are not selected, which is what happens here. If the option is selected, the heat map should not be re-rendered. So going back to the app, and if the custom rows are selected, then it's using the custom row, and it doesn't matter how much I type in the box, nothing is happening. So from my experience, the issue described here is not happening on my computer. So what I would really recommend, if the person or if another user can do that, is try to walk through the same scenario as I've just done myself and see if that is still the case, or maybe make your own video to answer to this one and show me yourself what is happening on your computer and describe what you would expect to happen at that point. The other thing that I mentioned in passing, right, is that the hit edit feature name button here, if I click on it, it opens a modal and no row selection. Oh, there is a row selection. Oh, I know why. So the row selection is gene 001, so now I should have 10 genes, and edit feature names now detect that there's a selection coming in, and if I import it, I'm getting gene 10 to 19 imported. But again, notice that the heat map hasn't updated yet, because even though I've edited the list, I still haven't clicked on the apply button. So when you click on the apply button is when the heat map gets redrawn. So again, to summarize, I've tried to replicate the bug described here, but in my environment, which is IC280 in Bioconductor 315, so the current stable release, I do not have the bug. So I'm gonna upload that video on YouTube. I'm gonna link, as promised, to the script so that you can try and replicate it, and also linking to the original issue, I think, that to make it more discoverable. And then from there, if we can confirm that the bug is or isn't happening, we'll go from there to resolve the issue. So I hope that video was helpful. If it is, well, I'll try to make more videos like this in the future to sort of describe. Obviously, videos will go very quickly out of date as new version of IC are released and fix bugs. Then the video will obviously not be relevant anymore, but it might still be a nice sort of proof that the issue was investigated, and if it ever reappears later on, we have a track of it. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to show here. Let me know what you think of the video, and if there's any information I should add in the future videos. So I can always show the session information as well, or these are things that I may be able to add in the comments under the video itself. All right, thank you for watching, and see you next time.